If you've ever had to deal with the US tax system without a social security number, you know it can feel like you're staring at a big bowl of alphabet soup. Well, today, we're going to unscramble two of the most important acronyms you'll run into, the ITN and the EIN. We're going to break down exactly what they are, why they exist, and most importantly, how to know which one you actually need. So, let's say this is you. You've got a US tax filing to do, or maybe you're starting a business here, but getting a social security number just isn't in the cards. This is a super common situation, and thankfully, the IRS has created specific tools just for this purpose. So let's dive in and see how they really work. Okay, first things first, let's zoom out. Everything we're talking about today falls under one big umbrella term, the Taxpayer Identification Number, or TIN. Think of it as the main category. Now, the Social Security Administration issues the one we all know, the SSN. But the IRS? They handle all the others, and that includes the ITIN and the EIN we're focused on. Getting this hierarchy straight is really the first step. To really get a handle on what an ITIN and an EIN do, we first have to understand the main tool they were built to work around, the Social Security number. The SSN is the baseline, right? And the whole reason the other numbers even exist is because of what the SSN does and what it doesn't. And this right here, this slide gets right to the heart of it. Just look at the contrast. The SSN comes from the Social Security Administration, and it's all about work and benefits. The ITIN, though, that comes from the IRS, and its job is one thing and one thing only, tax reporting. Their functions are totally separate. Honestly, if you only remember one thing from this explainer, make it this fundamental difference. So now that we have our baseline, let's pick up the first specialized tool from our toolbox, the ITIN. Think of this one as a precision instrument. It's designed specifically for individuals who have to file taxes with the IRS but aren't eligible for a social security number. And here's the official definition straight from the IRS. It's a 9-digit number, and here's the telltale sign. It always starts with a 9. That's not just a random choice. It's how the IRS system knows immediately what kind of number it's looking at. And its purpose is crystal clear. Give a taxpayer ID to someone who has a US tax obligation but can't get an SSN. Simple as that. So, how do you get one? This is a really key insight. It's not something you can just apply for whenever you feel like it. There's a very clear cause and effect process. First, you have to have a real, legitimate reason to file federal taxes. Second, you can't be eligible for an SSN. Only after those two things are true can you apply using Form W-7. And, this is the most critical part, you have to submit it with your federal tax return. The tax return itself is what triggers the need for the number. This really illustrates the whole point perfectly. The ITIN is basically a bridge. It connects people who are outside the Social Security system directly to the IRS system. It allows them to report their income, pay their taxes, and just fulfill their legal duty, plain and simple, no matter what their immigration status is. Okay, this slide is so important because it shows you what an ITIN can do versus what it absolutely can't. You can file your taxes, which is its main job. You can even open an interest-bearing bank account with it and claim some tax treaty benefits. But the IRS draws a very hard line. An ITIN does not authorize you to work, it does not make you eligible for Social Security, and it has absolutely zero impact on your immigration status. Those limitations are non-negotiable. All right, we've nailed down the tool for individuals. Now let's switch gears and walk over into the world of business. This is where our second tool comes into play, the Employer Identification Number, or EIN, and it has a completely different job to do. So just like an ITIN is a tax ID for a person, an EIN is a tax ID for a business. But notice that specific wording, business entity, estate, or trust. The EIN isn't attached to a person, it's attached to the organization itself. It's the business's own unique identifier in the eyes of the IRS. So, who actually needs one? Well, it's a must-have for formal business structures like corporations or LLCs.
But the part that trips a lot of people up is the section on sole proprietors. If you're running your own show and you hire even just one employee, boom, you need an EIN. Same thing if you have to file for bankruptcy or set up a certain type of retirement plan. Those are the triggers that force an individual business owner to get a business-level ID.
So far, we've kept these two IDs in their separate corners. But what about when they have to work together? The most interesting and, let's be honest, often the most confusing scenario is when a single person actually needs to have both. It might sound a little weird, but there's a very clear logic behind it. And that brings us to the million-dollar question that ties these two worlds together. If your personal tax ID is an ITIN, are you still able to get a business tax ID, an EIN?
And the answer is a big, clear yes. The IRS system is specifically designed to handle this. For example, a foreign individual running a business here as a sole proprietor would use their ITIN for their personal income tax return, and then use their EIN for all the business stuff, like payroll taxes if they have employees. The two numbers serve two distinct roles, one for you, the person, and one for your business.
And just so we're all on the same page, a sole proprietor is basically a business where there is no legal difference between the owner and the company. You are the business. And because the owner, you, is personally required to have a taxpayer ID, this is the most common situation where someone with an ITIN would also need to get an EIN for their business operations. Okay, before we wrap this up, we have to go through the user manual. You know, the fine print. These are the really critical rules and potential risks you have to understand to manage these tax IDs the right way. I want you to remember one number, 3. Why? Because under IRS rules, if you don't use your ITIN on a U.S. federal tax return for 3 consecutive tax years, it expires. It's a use it or lose it kind of deal, and you'd have to go through the whole renewal process to get it active again. Now for a very sensitive but incredibly important point, privacy. There's a federal law, section 610(3), that creates a really strong privacy shield around your tax information. The whole point is that the IRS is generally banned from sharing your data with other federal agencies, especially for civil immigration enforcement. The goal is to make sure everyone feels safe complying with tax laws. But, and this is a big but, that shield isn't absolute. In the case of a non-tax-related criminal investigation, a federal judge can issue a court order that requires the IRS to share that information. So where does that leave us? Well, these numbers started out as simple tools just for processing taxes. But as we've seen, they're now being used for things like opening bank accounts, even getting a mortgage. Which leaves us with a final question to chew on. In a world where work and investment are more global than ever, is that line between a simple tax ID and a broader financial identity becoming permanently blurred?